But did you see the ad from the Lincoln Project?
Yes, and I've got to say, they just totally set themselves up for this.
A Trump advisor dealing with sexual assault in prison, which, to be sure and to be clear, is a very real problem in our prison system.
Trump take on the old classic Paul Harvey thing. Guy, made a man. Here, when Donald Trump did that,
something that our elected lawmakers should have done something about long ago. But the Lincoln Project is making light of it because, hey, if Steve Bannon gets sexually assaulted, that's totally fine.
Why would one of the most powerful men in America be reduced to tweeting about a goofy parody ad? Because the Lincoln Project has a blueprint to troll him into national embarrassment. Watch as we break it down. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Imagine this. A former president angrily scrolling through Truth Social in the dead of night, fuming over being called Donnie Diapers. It sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly the genius of the Lincoln Project. They've turned political trolling into an art form. And for Donald Trump, these parody ads aren't just a joke, they're personal. The Lincoln Project, a group of Republican operatives turned Trump critics, has made it their mission to needle Trump in a way that no other political group ever could. Their ads don't center on policies, election strategies, or any traditional talking points. Instead, they aim straight at Trump's Achilles heel, his ego. It's like they cracked open a psychology textbook with his picture on the cover and thought, what would drive this man insane?
I looked at it and everybody's like, oh, this is so horrible. Oh, it's the worst thing ever. And I just shook my head and I said, they're so stupid.
Yeah.
They really are so stupid. They're going to play for like 3% here.
It's a very different thing than what TYT has ever aimed to do. Just
right.
Lowest common denominator, primal emotion.
Basically claiming he's the second coming of Jesus. And all they're doing is setting themselves up for a blistering parody of this. And sure enough, Nolan Ryan, he wound up really hard.
But I think the Lincoln Project here it's a perfect example of who they are. They put out a lot of ads. I enjoy some of them, but it's pure.
And they found the answer was simple: mockery. Take Grumpy Trumpy, a parody that plays off his habit of bad-mouthing critics. Instead of debating his talking points, the ad leans into the absurd, portraying him as thin-skinned and petulant. Then there's Donnie Diapers, a masterpiece of childish humor that zeroes in on one of Trump's deepest insecurities: his image. Everyone knows how much he obsesses over being seen as strong, powerful, and commanding. So what better way to cut deep than by suggesting the complete opposite in the most humiliating, juvenile way possible? The Lincoln Project even ramps it up with cartoonish imagery and over-the-top narration, making the insults impossible to ignore. These ads are funny on the surface, sure, but scratch a little deeper and they reveal a strategy crafted like a psychological booby trap. Studies on Trump's behavior have shown time and again how much he craves admiration and control. Any public attack on his character, especially one as silly as Grumpy Trumpy, doesn't just hurt his feelings, it makes him need to respond. The Lincoln Project knows this. Their endgame isn't just to insult Trump, it's to bait him into playing his part in their ongoing series of public humiliation. There's even some science to back this up. Experts argue that Trump's personality makes him particularly susceptible to this kind of trolling. Narcissists, psychologists explain, struggle when they feel their reputation is being threatened. They have to clap back to reassert themselves, no matter how counterproductive it might be. The Lincoln Project took that knowledge, blended it with a heavy dose of humor, and created a recipe for chaos. It's not about trying to win voters over with nuanced political arguments. It's about making sure the subject of the parody can't ignore it, and better yet, reacts to it in the most dramatic way possible. And here's the kicker: these ads are designed to do exactly that. You could even say they're custom made for Trump's psyche. By focusing on insults and ridiculous exaggerations, the Lincoln Project avoids boring political jabs. Instead of hitting Trump with serious commentary he could brush off or dismiss, they aim for his pride. They twist the knife, knowing he won't be able to resist taking the bait. Once Trump bites, it's game on. The Lincoln Project counts on his predictable backlash, the late-night social media meltdowns, the rants in interviews, and maybe even a raging moment at a rally. When he lashes out, he becomes part of their show. The more he complains, the more attention their ads get, which is exactly what they want. Names like Grumpy Trumpy and Donnie Diapers stick in people's heads precisely because Trump amplifies them himself. Even political analysts have noted how brilliant this approach is. It's an unorthodox way of flipping his biggest strength, his ability to dominate media attention, into a glaring weakness. By turning him into a caricature of himself, the Lincoln Project ensures the focus stays not on what he wants, his narrative of power and control, but on the laughingstock image they've created. It's almost too easy. And yet Trump keeps falling for it. This isn't a one-time trick. The Lincoln Project seems to be playing an endless game of digital dodgeball with him, where every ad is another throw and every reaction is him lobbing the ball right back at them. His responses are so predictable, they've essentially become part of the content, adding an extra layer of entertainment for viewers. So why does he keep reacting? Simple. His ego won't allow otherwise. Whether it's because he genuinely wants to defend himself or because he believes his followers expect him to fight back, Trump takes the bait every single time. Instead of letting the ads fade into the background, he throws gasoline on the fire by making them a headline. And once the outrage launches into the media, it's no longer just about the Lincoln Project or Trump. It becomes a viral loop on its own. These ads aren't random acts of trolling. They're strategic attacks designed to make Trump do exactly what he's been doing. The Lincoln Project knows exactly how to press his buttons, exploit his weaknesses, and weaponize his own behavior against him. Every hissy fit, every late night post on Truth Social is part of their plan to make sure their digs go viral. What's wild about this cycle is how predictable it is. It's like watching a rerun of a sitcom where you already know the punchline, but it's still just as funny the second time around. And yes, it is funny, but it's also brilliant in a calculated, almost ruthless way. The Lincoln Project isn't just trolling Trump, they're ensuring he stays in a position where every outburst validates their entire strategy. And here's where it gets good. Every time Trump takes the bait, the Lincoln Project's ads become something bigger than they ever intended. Stay tuned, because we're about to see how these meltdowns shift the whole conversation when the media picks it up. Why does Trump keep falling for the same trap over and over again? Simple. It's all about his ego. His obsession with being seen as dominant, admired, and always in control makes him the perfect target for the Lincoln Project strategy. They know exactly how to get to him, and he makes their job easy by reacting just as they want. This isn't just trolling, it's a masterclass in manipulating someone's personality quirks, turning them into an endless loop of free content. At the core of all this is Trump's fixation on image and reputation. His entire public persona is based on being the winner, the guy who never loses, always fights back, and has the best everything. Best hotels, best ratings, best crowd sizes. So what happens when that image gets mocked with ads that strip away the veneer of power and success? That's when the meltdown begins. Grumpy Trumpy didn't just make him look childish, it framed him as the kind of person who can't even handle criticism without throwing a tantrum. And Donnie Diapers? That doesn't go after his policies or his political agenda. It drags his very sense of masculinity into question, something he clearly cares about deeply. For Trump, these ads aren't just annoying, they're humiliating on a personal, visceral level. Ironically though, his attempts to defend himself always backfire. It's like he can't help but add fuel to the fire. Take his Truth Social posts, for instance. When Donnie Diapers went viral, did he ignore it? Nope, he ranted about it, calling the Lincoln Project names and accusing them of being irrelevant, but in doing so, he only gave the ad more visibility. His posts weren't just defensive, they screamed, "Yes, I saw it, and yes, it got to me." The Lincoln Project didn't need to spend another dime promoting the ad. Trump took care of that for them. Then there are his off-script rants at rallies. He's there to talk about policies or his political rivals, but somehow he ends up mentioning grumpy ads made by a bunch of losers. Out of all the things he could focus on, that's what he chooses to highlight, an attack that ridicules him as a fuming toddler. The irony is almost too much. Psychologists who study narcissistic behavior say this makes sense. One of the hallmarks of narcissism is his extreme sensitivity to embarrassment or humiliation. For someone like Trump, mockery isn't just annoying, it's threatening. It exposes cracks in the carefully constructed image he wants the world to see, and the Lincoln Project has mastered how to exploit that weakness. Instead of engaging with Trump's political points, they sidestep them entirely and focus on the things he can't ignore, his pride and his insecurities. This is why their strategy works so well. It doesn't matter if the jokes are juvenile. In fact, the more ridiculous they are, the harder they hit because of how seriously Trump takes himself. The funny thing is, his responses often include some epic self-owns. Remember when he raged against the Lincoln Project by calling them failed Republicans trying to get back at me? It was meant to discredit them, but all it did was confirm that their trolling was working. The angrier he gets, the more attention he draws to their ad, which is exactly what they want. He's like a character in a comedy who steps on every rake in the yard, never realizing he's deepening the joke every time. The Lincoln Project doesn't even have to work that hard. They just need to sit back and wait for Trump to take the bait. Once he does, the game changes. News outlets jump on the story, turning what might have been a few thousand views on Twitter into a national headline. Suddenly, clips of Trump ranting about Donnie Diapers are airing on cable news and getting dissected by commentators. Late-night comedians pick it up and add their own twist, spreading the message even further. Even his supporters, the people who claim they hate left-wing media, end up seeing the ads just because they're everywhere. Trump's spiral amplifies the Lincoln Project's message far beyond its original audience, giving their trolling a reach they could never buy with ads alone. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The fact that Trump can't ignore these ads turns into part of their story. Analysts have pointed out that this dynamic is genius because it traps him in a loop. He sees an ad, reacts, makes himself the center of attention, and then more people see the ad because of his reaction. It's like watching a snake eat its own tail. Meanwhile, the Lincoln Project is sitting back, smiling, and probably brainstorming their next attack. This is the second step of their strategy, leveraging Trump's predictable outbursts to make their ads bigger than they ever intended. Without fail, he reacts in precisely the way they want him to. It's not just amusing, it's meticulously planned. Having someone so reactive as your target practically guarantees success. One political analyst even noted that Trump's inability to ignore these attacks has turned him into something of a free marketing department for the Lincoln Project. They don't need to run a $10 million ad campaign when Trump himself will spread the joke far and wide for them. And it's not just about the visibility. Every meltdown draws attention back to Trump's flaws, the arrogance, the pettiness, the inability to let something go. The Lincoln Project doesn't even need to hammer those points home anymore. Trump does it for them. The beauty of this setup is that it blurs the lines between the troll, the target, and the audience. Trump's outrage fuels the cycle, and the whole thing becomes a spectacle too entertaining to ignore. At this point, the trolls aren't just living rent-free in his head, they're hosting a house party. And as we'll see next, the media frenzy these meltdowns spark doesn't just boost the Lincoln Project, it turns trolling into an unstoppable viral force. What's better than creating a viral ad? Having someone else make it viral for you, for free. That's exactly what happens when Trump sees a Lincoln Project ad, blows a gasket, and hands the media a story that's absolutely impossible to ignore. It's no secret that Trump thrives on attention, but ironically, his need to stay in the spotlight is the very thing that keeps these ads dominating headlines. Here's how it works. The Lincoln Project creates an ad designed to mock Trump in the most outrageous, eye-catching way possible. They know it'll get under his skin, it always does. But the real trick happens after Trump sees it. Instead of letting it pass, like most politicians might, he goes on the offensive. He tweets about it, rants about it, and sometimes even works it into his speeches. And as soon as that happens, it's like blood in the water for the press. Political analysts have pointed out that Trump's meltdowns are essentially catnip for journalists. They're dramatic, attention-grabbing, and full of quotable one-liners, even if those lines are completely unhinged. Take the ad Morning in America, for example. The Lincoln Project didn't hold back, releasing a grim parody of Ronald Reagan's famous campaign ad Morning in America. Instead of optimism and prosperity, the new version paints a bleak picture of Trump's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, complete with staggering economic numbers and haunting imagery. Trump could have ignored it. After all, it was just a minute-long ad posted online. But instead, he went ballistic. He launched into a series series of angry tweets, attacking the ad and calling the creators of the Lincoln Project losers. His reaction wasn't just an attack, it was an amplifier. Suddenly, the ad that might have been seen by a fraction of people online was being replayed on every major news network. Late night comedy shows picked it up, social media ran with it, and the Lincoln Project just leaned back and watched the views rack up. This isn't a one-off phenomenon. It happens again and again. Trump can't resist, and the media can't look away. Analysts have even described these meltdowns as a perfect storm of drama and politics, saying Trump's rants are irresistible for news outlets. They know their readers and viewers love a juicy story, and there's no better story than Trump losing his cool. It doesn't matter if you love him, hate him, or just find him entertaining. People will tune in to see what ridiculous thing he said now. And while that's happening, guess who gets an audience they never could have dreamed of? The Lincoln Project. The best part is that this media machine doesn't just expose the ads to Trump's critics, it spreads them to everyone, even his staunchest supporters. Think about it, most of those people probably aren't following the Lincoln Project directly, but when Fox News has to cover Trump's reaction, or when clips of his rants go viral, there's no escaping it. Even if they hate watch it, those ads are still getting into their heads. The Lincoln Project understands that they're not just targeting the people who already dislike Trump. By exploiting his tantrums and the media's appetite for conflict, they ensure that the message reaches every corner of the political spectrum, and the more widespread it becomes, the harder it is for Trump to spin the narrative back in his favor. What's particularly wild is the ripple effect this creates. Once the media picks up on a story, it grows wings and flies far beyond its original audience. Ads like Morning in America didn't just show up on TV and in news articles. They became memes, discussion topics, punchlines on late night shows. When even the comedic monologues are talking about your trolling ad, you know you've hit a home run, and the Lincoln Project barely had to pay for any of it. It's an incredibly savvy move. Let Trump's own words and the media's obsession with his drama do the work for you. Even from a psychological standpoint, this is fascinating. Trump's entire persona is based on being a master of media manipulation, but in this case, he's been outplayed. His reactions, which he probably sees as strong and defiant, actually make him look weaker and more rattled. Media analysts note that Trump's inability to ignore these jabs is part weakness and part habit. He craves attention so badly that even when it would be better to stay silent, he can't let anything go. And that's exactly the kind of person the Lincoln Project thrives on trolling. Of course, watching the strategy work is entertaining, but it also reveals something deeper about how media works in the digital age. The more Trump protests, the more oxygen he gives these ads, and the harder it is for anyone to ignore them. For the Lincoln Project, this strategy isn't just a win, it's a gold mine. It costs them practically nothing compared to a traditional campaign, but it gives them the kind of exposure political ad makers dream of. It's no wonder they keep going back to the same playbook. It's too effective not to. And how do they feel about all this attention? Let's just say they're probably not losing any sleep over it. The Lincoln Project has created a perfect loop. Troll Trump, watch him react, let the media pick it up, rinse, repeat. At this point, Trump's outrage isn't an obstacle. It's a tool they've mastered. Every angry tweet, every rant, every shout out, whether it's in a rally or an interview, adds to their clout. It's a level of irony you couldn't make up. Trump, the self-proclaimed king of media, is now a key player in the Lincoln Project's marketing department, whether he likes it or not. And here's where it all comes together. Trump's biggest strength has always been his ability to dominate the media, but in this case, it's also his downfall. By turning his own personality against him, the Lincoln Project has flipped the script completely. Every reaction, every headline, every viral rant, it all circles back to one point. They're winning because he can't stop himself. And as we'll see next, this isn't just humiliating for Trump, it's the cornerstone of their larger strategy. Trump loves to think of himself as a media mastermind, but the Lincoln Project has flipped that narrative completely. By exploiting his ego, they've turned him into their unwitting spokesperson, giving their parody ads more power than any paid campaign ever could. Every time he reacts with late night rants or rally tantrums, all he's doing is proving their point and pulling more eyes onto their message. So what does this tell us about ego in modern politics? Can being thin-skinned really be your biggest weakness? One big question lingers. Will Trump learn to ignore them, or is this just round one of his trolling nightmare?